All right, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you to everyone who's here, and Josh and Heather and your whole team that's not here. Thank you for all you guys do to make our life better, so that when we come in here, we can at least have a conversation. So I know you guys don't get thanks very much, but we sure do appreciate it. And also to our city council members that come every week. I know that's a little bit painful, and we got 4 people here that aren't up here, and so anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as it is.
Second it. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, did anyone have any changes to the minutes that haven't already been made, or do I have an approval or a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We don't have a consent agenda today, so we'll move straight into the administrative session. And Josh, I assume you're the guy doing the training? Unless you got the city council members to come up here and do it. That would have been a good idea.
I appreciate you all coming tonight. We're really trying to get in the habit of not canceling meetings generally when we don't have items, but to take this opportunity, especially with such a young commission in general, to train and as we get into the general plan, have the opportunity to have general discussions about planning topics and more prospective or proactive future-looking elements. The first element that I'd like to review tonight is kind of the structure of the general plan in the city in terms of plans and ordinances and zones, all those types of things, and where the Planning Commission fits into that. Then we have copies of the bylaws, which you've, I believe, received via email previously. But there's a couple of questions in there that we have for you as we're drafting, and we'll bring these revisions back to you to amend and update these bylaws, and a couple elements of discussion related to that. So first, the general plan. It's the top level policy document in the city. All plans point back to the general plan, and all plans kind of derive their focus from the general plan. It guides future development, so all of the new stuff that happens, but it also guides the evolution of the existing city, because cities are never finished. There's no such thing as a neighborhood or a city or a block that's done. One of my professors at the U instituted or started a little organization called the Temporary Museum of Permanent Change to kind of push back against the idea that some had as downtown Salt Lake was redeveloping with Crossroads and ZCMI malls, that when those were finished, they would be done. Those blocks would, and to put up, they kind of had exhibits around the block showing how that block had evolved so many times over the years, and just the last iteration kind of being Crossroads and ZCMI. And so that was one of his mantras, that the change is a permanent fixture of cities, and the general plan provides the policy guidance for guiding that change. It is intended to and is intended to reflect and is a product of community priorities and values. One of the most expensive elements of the general plan is all of the public engagement, the meetings, the updates with City Council Planning Commission, and one of our main goals in this general plan update that we're just getting underway with is to convene as big of a segment and as many people, citizens of Springville and stakeholders in Springville as we possibly can, so that as we advance the plan, that we have a clear understanding that it reflects the priorities and values of the community, and that anyone who's had the desire to participate has been given an opportunity to do so, and an opportunity that really makes it easy for them. We're not expecting everyone to show up to a public hearing at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night, but that we take the engagement to them and plan to have dozens and dozens of even small neighborhood scale classroom level engagements in schools, and using self-directed facilitation kits. But that's really one of our big goals, is that when the Planning Commission sees the plan, that you can be confident that it is the result of a robust public engagement process. And as it goes on to the City Council, that the City Council can see the mandate that public participation has created for the priorities and policies recommended in the plan. In addition to just having the top level policies, it includes supporting goals, or the top level kind of vision. It has goals, policies, and implementation measures that tell us how to actually achieve the vision. And in particular, this general plan is going to provide us with tools that we've been lacking. You've looked at the members of the Planning Commission that have been here for a little bit have seen a number of plans come through recently, and in a number of those cases, we don't have the zoning tools or other types of tools, standards, and specifications to implement all the recommendations of those plans. So as part of this general plan, we're really working towards integrating a comprehensive update or a comprehensive overhaul of the city's zoning code as an integrated part of the general plan kind of towards the end of the process. So we can answer these questions about what we want the future of the city to look like, and then develop the tools in the same process without having to relitigate or re-engage everyone on essentially the same topic by establishing the vision and the policies and then coming back and saying, hey, now we're going to rewrite the zone. Does this do what you thought it should do? But by doing that all together, both our general plan will be better because it will be built with an eye towards implementation and really how its recommendations will be put into place. But the zoning code will also be better because it will be reviewed comprehensively, be part of this process that involves a wide range of stakeholders. And our code hasn't had any real substantive, holistic review or change in structure for over 20 years. So it's time, especially with the evolution of planning tools and the types of patterns of development that may be recommended in the general plan and have been recommended in some of our other plans, to have all those tools in place. This is a diagram we use a lot. It actually comes from our previous general plan, and it has this great red line in the middle of it. And on top of the red line is planning, and on the bottom is implementation. So where does somebody want to pause it or give us an idea of where you think you as a board, or as a commission, the Planning Commission, where do you live? Do you live on the top of that line or on the bottom of that line?
Make more sense on the bottom,
Okay.
under implementation for the work we do.
Any other thoughts?
I think it's a trick question. I think we're a little bit
Yeah.
of both.
It is a bit of a trick question. Most of the things you do on a day-to-day basis are on the top of the line. When you pass a zone, or when you amend a code, or you amend the zoning map, that is really setting policy, and it's kind of the bridges planning implementation. When you're working on the general plan, when we were working on the downtown plan, the reframing downtown, the Dry Creek Community Plan or 1600 South Corridor Plan, the North Main Street plan we're working on right now, stationary plan, active transportation plan, all of those live up above the line in this master development plan or general plan level. But when we come down to make specific regulatory provisions, like ordinances, policies, standards, and specs, we do really live below the line. So the Planning Commission really straddles both sides of that. But primarily in the regulatory side, the Planning Commission doesn't have a lot of involvement in implementing programs or other types of actions that are more administrative or staff level, all the way down to our frontline staff. The general plan, as we mentioned, sits at the top, but each physical plan we have, so every one of our, what we call our enterprise funds, or our funds that operate like a business, or our parts of our government that operate like a business, like our water department, our power department, sewer, stormwater, those all have master development plans that lay out what they're going to do to maintain or to build their system over the next 5 years, or in general. And then from those come 5-year capital improvement programs. And then each year, everyone puts together a capital improvement plan or a CIP budget and tells us what they're going to do every year. So that's an element where the Planning Commission, we hope in the future, can be more involved by looking at the general plan and helping to hold us as staff and departments accountable to integrating the things in the master development plan or our master plans and our capital improvement plans to actually accomplish what's in the general plan. Because if you go back and look at our existing general plan, we've got some great renderings of closing the north, or changing the river in between 100 and 200 east at 100 south, and implementing some different cross sections in downtown for the streets, putting medians on Second West, those type of things. All these kind of grandiose plans, and we're just now getting to the point where maybe this year we may be able to finish the work on the river in between 100 and 200 east. That's a place where our plans often fall apart, is that connection between the policy and actually getting it into a budget that allocates some money to doing those.
Hey, Josh, can I ask a question? Go back to that.
Mhm. Please.
You have under the programs, boards and commissions, what would be the role there under programs? Is that something this commission would be a part of?
That probably more falls, and we've rearranged and kind of redone the way boards and commissions work in the last 2 years. So much after this diagram, our boards and commissions really currently are designed to be a resource and a recommending body to the city council. But we do have ad hoc committees or department committees that are outlined in the code that are essentially there to help staff. So we have a committee that helps put on Art City Days, or a committee to do any number of activities, or we have a public art committee.
Right.
And those are there to really provide additional capacity to staff to implement programs.
So that's more of the type of boards or commissions you're talking about.
Correct. Whereas the boards and commissions, as they're currently constituted, like the Planning Commission, the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Committee Board, and the Community Board, really sit up very much in the top level of this and make recommendations about long-range strategy and plan to the City Council.
Would it be better to have that say committees? Would it be better to have it say committees so it's more understood?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, this diagram is
Dated.
is dated, but is good for facilitating conversation, and we use it a lot just to kind of simplify how everything works. But if we include one in the new general plan to help people understand how everything works together, then we definitely will make sure it reflects the current makeup of the current way we handle boards and commissions.
Hey, Josh, before you leave, I'll ask one as well. So in my previous life, when I developed a business plan, I'd have and it'd be similar to this, I'd have my objective, my goal, here's what I'm trying to accomplish with this business plan, then I'd develop my strategy. And usually there were 3 strategies or 4 strategies, whatever it called for. And then I would have my initiatives, which is the implementation portion of this.
Right.
So as we would go along, we would learn a lot, right? Just like the city does as well, right? And so as we learn those things, how is it? Because, I think when I look at the Planning Commission, how is it that we would go about adjusting and changing those things when it affects the strategic portion of it as well? It's a really hard thing for me to comprehend in here,
Yes.
because I generally didn't agree with changing the strategy ever. But, we always left our initiatives or the implementation portion in a situation where, hey, we've learned something now, let's adjust. And being in here, I think it's really hard, at least in the planning commission. I don't think it's as tough in the city council, but in the planning commission, it's tough for me to figure out how to do that.
It is tricky. We purposely, I think, along what you said, make the kind of the general plan is a little bit
Rigid?
perhaps more rigid, but it shouldn't. It should be a living document where we can continue to embody, advancing institutional knowledge and
Adaptation to change.
markets. There's so many realities of development and demographics and housing that have changed since our last general plan. I mean, I think I was surprised, and you all may be surprised to learn that for the first time, Utah's birth rate is below replacement.
So,
So our future growth will primarily, well, not primarily, but a good portion of our future growth will be a result of net in-migration. Whereas in the 80s, in the kind of the late 80s financial crisis, we had a net out-migration from Utah because we weren't very economically diverse, and we had a lot of people leave, and we were able to still maintain positive population growth because of our birth rate. But we're still young and we still have large households, but we're older and smaller than we used to be. So there's so many things that change, and the balance of that in a general plan to maintain some type of strategic direction without kind of swinging all over the place, but to make that flexible enough to adapt is, I think, one of the central challenges of
yeah.
what you guys do.
And I hope that the city council would give us direction that if we see it necessary or believe it necessary, because I think the people in this group, on this commission, really have a desire to do the right thing, right? It's not a popularity contest. I think there have been people here in the past who were looking just for the popularity side, but it's not a popularity contest, and I hope that we always recognize, and that the city council recognizes as well, that if the planning commission sees that there's a flaw in the plan, that it's okay to have that conversation and maybe even push it up to the city council. And I'd like to know that that's the case, because I don't think it's been the case in the past. In fact, I've seen criticism come down from the city council when the planning commission has recommended such a thing.
From your mayor, he is always asking me to convey to the planning commission that you spend far more time on any item generally than the city council is able to. You typically convene the public hearings where the majority of the public input comes in, and you generally work in this realm all the time, whereas they are not always dealing with land use and planning issues. They're doing the budget and doing other types of things. That your input is very valuable and well considered, and is very much appreciated. It sometimes we feel other signals when proposals that we feel are well vetted are sometimes taken a different direction by the city council. But I think what we can do, and we haven't done well since I've been here, is facilitate a more open dialogue between the planning commission and the city council by having joint meetings, by having discussions of policy to make sure there is alignment or at least understanding. And the big thing that I think is going to be different as we move forward is over the past decade, Troy Fitzgerald, our city administrator, has related that as the council's asked staff to do something that isn't necessarily a reflection of a plan, we've kind of just been able to just do that thing. But as our organization grows, and as boards and committees grow, and as more public involvement happens, and there's more groups tied to plans, that we will be much more held to what's in our plans, and will have to be much more vigilant about making adjustments to those plans when we're directed by the council or by the planning commission to do something different, so that we can keep our implementation more aligned with the plan. And when the plan needs to
Sure.
change, then
Sure. And I think everybody would agree with that. It's just those times when maybe the right thing is not aligned with the plan. We
Yes.
need to know that those comments can be made freely and will
Yes.
be well listened to as well.
Please.
And Josh, you mentioned that the general plan would be updated. I noticed, I mean, it's, the goal in the current general plan was planning for 2030, is what
Right.
it says. Is there a timeline, or when do we anticipate updating the general plan?
We should, as a matter of course, not always be reviewing it. A scheduled update or a deep look should happen at least every 10 years, and a kind of an alignment check, implementation measures, market reality check on a 5-year basis.
So we're overdue.
We're far overdue. Yes. My predecessor, Fred Agater, had a general plan update, kind of the 5-year update queued up, but we weren't able to get that across the finish line, and it's now another 6, 7, 8 years later. I think that was 2015 or 2016. So we really are at the point where it's more than a copy edit.
Well, I think the good thing about the general plan is that it's a big picture view. And we're dealing with all the time on a micro scale of not in my neighborhood, or I want this because this or that. But the general plan will help us to, make a good overall plan, because it's very difficult to tell somebody no when, you know what I mean? An individual no when they come and ask us for things, but I think if we have a good general plan, then we can step back and say, generally, this is how we want to happen. This is where, because usually most of the issues that come up are, we've got to build a new sewer plant, and now it's next to my house. This sucks. This is bad. This isn't fair. This isn't right. Well,
Or it stinks.
yeah, it stinks. Yeah.
It does occasionally.
No, I'm just saying that I think that's the good thing about a general plan and these big plans, is they have big picture items.
Yeah.
We have zoning, we have other things to try to say, on the individual case basis, you have a legitimate argument, but the general plan is saying, no, this is where we're at. And anyone can use that general plan. Anyone can look at it. Someone wants to come buy land, buy things, they can look at the overlays, they can, study it and say, look, where's this growth growing? So, anyway, I think that's a powerful thing to have that up front,
That makes me think of two elements that we are really working to improve on. The first is that each of our recommendations, when we bring either plans to you that live in this kind of level under or inside of the general plan, like the reframing downtown plan or active transportation plan, or specific legislative items like a zone map amendment or a text amendment, that we make specific reference to and analysis of the proposal's concordance with the general plan. That we give you those findings in the staff report that says the general plan says A, B, C. This proposal meets A but not B and C, so that we give you the backup you need to make a well-reasoned decision, and a decision that is, in all fairness, defensible legally even in the future, as depending on the type of decision we're making. So I would ask all of you to push back and challenge us on that if you feel that we're making recommendations that aren't adequately grounded in the general plan, or we're not citing findings and recommendations from the general plan to support our recommendations. And the second is that we need to make the general plan more accessible, and that's going to be one of the elements that we're really excited about the new general plan. Is the company we've retained is really a leader in both really innovative digital methods of building the plan and verifying the plan. They're kind of leaders in what we call digital twins, kind of making a virtual version of the city and applying the plan and seeing if it gives us what we think it's going to give us. But one of the key elements of their deliverables is going to be an online executive summary level interactive version of the general plan that is much more user friendly and can be organized and accessed by topic, unlike the current 100 and some odd page PDF we have currently posted to the website, which doesn't even have links in the table of contents, which we could just do very easily, but have never have.
Josh, as a new person, what do you recommend doing as far as educating ourselves on this? Just, I mean, with the old going out and new coming in, how much time should we allocate to studying that old copy?
That's a really good question. The community board spent about 2 years of monthly 2-hour meetings doing it, and they feel relatively prepared to move forward and kind of restless to move forward. I would say as we go through this process, looking at being familiar with the objectives, the goals, and the policies will probably give you the best mileage, because then you'll be able to understand what the old plan was telling us to do and have a basis for understanding what the new, the change, if the new plan is telling us the same thing or different things. I wouldn't say, unless you're really interested, going and spending a long time in the land use analysis to learn what percentage is which kind, or reviewing the population breakdown, but understanding those objectives and policies underneath each of the goals in each section is key. Any other questions on the general structure of everything? We're going to dive into it a little bit more in a few slides. So our current general plan elements include land use, annexation. We have a little map in the general plan that shows that analyzes every potential annexation area. We're going to have to be updating that a bunch, since Spanish Fork has annexed all of the biggest pieces in our annexation policy declaration plan, except the one to the south of the Crandall land between the railroads. So that's one we're going to take a look at. Transportation or circulation is a required element under state code, and so is housing. So those land use, annexation, transportation, circulation, housing are required elements under the State Land Use Development Management Act. There's a new element dealing with water conservation that has been added. We also have parks, trails, and recreation in there, and community facilities and services. If you look in the general plan, there's mention of the museum, the library, and the sewer plant, the water system, all those things. And we're going to try to organize the new general plan around the boards and commissions that handle each of those functional areas of the city. We also have a community identity and economic development in there, and this will be another interesting facet of the general plan, in that we've updated a number of these plans recently. Like transportation is just coming across the finish line for an update. We're always working on housing because the legislature is always moving the target for us on that. We have a relatively new parks, trails, and recreation plan that is actually going through kind of a initial update and review right now, about 2 years in. And then we have an economic development plan from about 8 years ago, I think 2016 or 2017. So determining how those play in and what level of recommendations we get to in the general plan will be a key part of that. In our current general plan, we also have environment and then community districts and corridors, which really live in separate plans underneath the general plan, like the historic central community plan and the dry creek plan and others. So, for example, how this operates is we have the economic development section of the general plan, and it said you should have a more fleshed out economic development master plan. So in 2015, we adopted the city economic development master plan, and it had specific projects or specific areas mentioned as catalytic sites. And in this case, this is the 300 South to 400 South transition in downtown. It states rather accurately that the current transition from historic downtown to the South Main Corridor is abrupt and immediate. Basically, you hit Pier 49 Pizza, and you're like, ah, this is a great historic downtown, and then all of a sudden you're in a parking lot in front of an early 80s grocery store. So abrupt was very apt. This tells us that projects should be encouraged, which improve the transition from the historic downtown to the Main Street corridor, and businesses may be encouraged to bring their front closer to the street. So how do we encourage developments to do anything? How do we tell developments what to do?
Incentivize them.
Okay, more code. We've got to write code. So
Stick, not a carrot.
yeah, well, I like to write code and saying this is what we would like to see. This is what you can do, as opposed to a list of thou shalt not do this and this and this and this. But this is build 2 lines instead of setbacks, those type of things. So to implement this, when I came into my position in 2019, we had a developer working on the Allens block with no zone in the city that would really accommodate what they were looking to do, because we hadn't done that part yet. So we adopted the Main Street South Gateway zone. We wrote design standards and illustrated them. An example is on the right to kind of tell people how, in a very, very basic, Hunter will look at these and say, that's not much of a design standards, but very basic design standards, talking about the character development that we are looking at, and telling them where the buildings go and establishing all the parameters there. And that has facilitated the Allens Block redevelopment, which has and you're the first public body in a public meeting to hear this, there is a demolition permit in the queue for the Allens Block.
What?
So there you go.
Fruition is coming?
And
So exciting.
this is an early rendering of what of the project. It doesn't look quite like this anymore, but you kind of get a general character feel.
I will point out Josh helped this designer and developer with some of the architectural elements to make them look correct. So
Yes, which calls into question: do we need
So
more
rather-
design standards when we don't have somebody on the other side of the table that's as willing to learn about how an arch is made, or those type of things, or basic kind of elements of historically based design. So we've been all the way from the general plan, which tells us to do an economic development plan. Economic development plan says, hey, the south end of Main Street's kind of rough. So then we write a zone, and then we get a project, and now we have a demolition permit in the queue, and should have a building permit for the townhomes on the west side of the block in a couple months.
So it's going to be in pieces then?
Yes, they're going to take the building down, start working on all of the public improvements, because there is less pavement remaining than not once all of the utilities are installed and all the improvements are done in the streets. We have to replace a water line, we have to move irrigation, we have to kill all the old utility services, we have to replace the services to the other side of the street because we're replacing the main. All the curb and gutter around the whole block and sidewalk obviously goes away. So there's a lot of public improvements that need to happen, and then they're going to stage development of the townhomes on the east side of the block, and then be able to get that in so that they're not essentially building in the parking lot of the mixed use to facilitate building the townhomes. So that's the process, and they've communicated to us that they'd like to submit for a permit for the mixed-use portion, the east side of the block, before the end of the year. So this project is moving forward. So that's the quick, not so quick introduction to how the general plan works and how it ends up getting us something on the ground through code and all of those elements. We're going to have a lot more discussion on that. I really appreciate that people have asked questions tonight, and we've had a chance to kind of talk a little bit about the strategy, how this all works. We're currently developing a training schedule, and are looking to do some type of retreat, multi-hour kind of meeting sometime in the next 4 to 5 months to really hone in on a couple of things and spend some time on the general plan. It's something that Fred Agater used to do more consistently, and even my direct predecessor Glenn did. And I don't think I've ever fully come out of COVID, and so that remembering we should like have
No one has.
get together and have meetings and be strategic. But let me pass out to you these bylaws.
Hey, Heather, I think it would be a great idea, just so that everybody had it, maybe send a link to the whole group to the general plan so people can go in and peruse it and look through it, so, yeah.
And Josh, just as a question again on the general plan, do you have a timeline or a goal for when that
Yes,
is going to
the consultant team's timeline tells us 16 months from contract execution. I have a meeting with legal tomorrow to review the contract, and the consultant team has turned around scope revisions.
Okay.
So we're hopefully really close to getting that contract signed and getting underway. We'll see if we make 16 months. I don't think we've done rarely have we done much and done a plan in 16 months, let alone something as comprehensive as the general plan. But these people have the process management and quality control and kind of back end setup to, and have the sheer volume of these plans that they've done, that I have a lot of confidence that they'll help us stay moving. That we're not going to experience what we've had on other plans where I just don't hear from the consultant team for a month and I have to prod them and ask them where they're at. So that's one element that they pitched that was really impressive to us, and hopefully will facilitate maintaining that timeline.
Is it possible for us to get a copy of that, just have print one out? And it's
Of
how many
the-
pages, like what?
Of the current general plan? Yeah, we can print you off a copy. I mean, it's thick, but
That'd be great. Then we just have, you make notes. You
yeah.
bind it, refer to it, and kind of have an
Absolutely.
understanding. It's a lot easier than trying to sit and,
Aren't there some old printouts somewhere around the spiral binders that they had at one point?
Probably.
That's a solid probably.
Yeah, I probably print them faster than I could find them. But yes, who would like, out of the seven of you, who would like a paper copy of the current general plan?
You said it's available online though, right?
It is available online.
Send out a link to us, so.
Okay, great. Yeah, it just feels like if that plan is solid, that makes our job really, really, really easy. It gives us something to lean on
Step
really hard.
changes.
Right, no, to your
What was
point,
the
Brent.
quote?
Yeah,
The temporary museum of permanent change. Yeah,
yes,
change is
exactly.
the permanent companion of a city. Yeah,
I think one of the things that the general plan currently has that I think our future plan would also have are the primary goals
That's the
behind it.
general piece.
yep.
And then there's strategies of implementation.
Yep.
So really, when I think as a planning commission, we should be probably most familiar with what the goals and the strategies are to be able to help us
right.
influence or
And
make
then
decisions.
if we see a strategy that doesn't make sense based on changes that are going on in the community, we can relook at that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a better stated rationale for why, in response to Tyler's question, I felt that that's the most useful part of really the key part of the plan to get familiar with. So I'll print. We'll make some copies. We'll get you links. We'll send you an email. This just has me thinking. We'll send you an email in the next few days that directs you to the page with all the plans on it. We now have one page with all the plans, so you don't have to hunt across 7 departments to find the plans. And also a link to our zoning code and a kind of a brief explanation of how that works. When I moved here 8 years ago, being a planner, even it took me a minute to go, how is this organized? Where do I find my setbacks? Because it was a little different than I was used to. So we'll spend some time on that, but don't get too attached to it.
So just to follow up on your earlier question, anybody else wanted a hard copy? So just one hard
Okay, one
copy?
for Ralph.
Okay.
Now maybe next year I'll budget for iPad Pros for everybody, and we can just
There you go, follow along that.
use our Apple pencils.
And, any other questions on the administrative session?
I do have a couple questions for you on the bylaws. The first big question is on page 2 under Article 3 meetings, 1.2. The bylaws tell us that the second or the first meeting of the month is essentially the business meeting, and to review site-specific actions, site plans, subdivisions, zoning ordinance amendments. You do much less of that than the Planning Commission did 14 years ago when this was last adopted because of changes to state code. And then it tells us that the second meeting, Planning Commission should start at 6, and is to primarily be a work session to discuss general planning issues, to be doing more of your strategic work. We haven't, I don't know how long it has been since we have not been doing this. It predates me, and Heather doesn't have any recollection of it working that way either.
I mean, I do, but I'm glad that we don't do it that way.
Why?
I always had the hardest time
Don't get me wrong,
remembering.
I don't want a
No,
4-hour meeting.
No, it was the flip-flopping of the times. So it was always just like, wait, which week is it? And I gotta figure out time. Just one time, it's super nice.
But I think the question is, the question I would have then is, do we need a time where we do take the time to discuss general planning issues and how it's affecting our city today? And it seems like we would want to have that. I mean, I'd be fine putting it on an agenda and not having it say
Yeah,
the fourth
that's the
fourth
thing.
Tuesday.
By not having it specified that meeting is about that, it allows more flexibility when petitioners, want to do things. And we can always put on the agenda
Yeah.
that we want to do
So
that.
I'd be okay with that, Josh, if there are general planning issues, because I hate meetings just to have meetings. And if there are general planning discussions, we all agree that there are general planning discussions that need to be had. I'd say let's put it on as a work session item.
Okay. We will work to set up a schedule and get you both for training and kind of perspective, the things we're looking forward to, like the general plan. Because we are just refining the schedule with our consultant team. We'll be able to kind of tell you when we're going to try to bring them in on days that overlap with meetings we're already having, like Tuesdays for council and planning commission, to calendar those out for you so you can see when those discussions are coming and be aware.
The other thing, and we had asked Kim to do one time just to make sure that everybody remembered, but I think it would be great. And Heather, I know you do so much already. I hate to ask you to do more.
Oh, no.
Will you just send out like a meeting, on
A meeting request?
yeah, a
Like
meeting request for,
Outlook or
on the
Teams
on the nights, on Outlook, whatever, so that people can just jump in, add it to their calendar, and the reminder comes up on my iPhone. And
What's the best way to do that? I've had mixed success with sending external meeting invites.
well, when Kim did it, it worked for me.
Okay, so if we just send you out an Outlook, an ICS,
Yeah,
I
Okay.
think that should
I mean,
work.
that should allow anyone, even with Gmail, to be able to
okay, perfect,
accept.
perfect.
And then with like
Yeah.
reminders up front, Okay.
So does anyone see any utility in anything past the first sentence of this Article 3, 1.2 that kind of bifurcates the meetings?
I don't.
Yeah, I
And
don't
we,
think so.
we also don't have the agenda review meeting before anymore either,
Right, you just approve the agenda and if there's any discussion. Okay.
which I think was a good change as well, because it did get muddy a bit with the meeting before, and too much conversation being, going on in that meeting.
Right.
That should have been in the main meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so,
That's the work session
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
The second key one and is a section I actually added in section 5 on the very last page, 5.3. At the last planning commission, or prior to the last planning commission meeting, I was contacted by one of our city council members who Hunter had contacted about talking to the city council or making a presentation to the city council. And then Brett was at the meeting to, I presumably, make a comment during the public hearing.
And I was ready to resign my commission if they said no.
And that is fine.
Said no, don't.
To me, standing up and making a public.
I had to kind of weigh, should we talk about this now or should we talk about it after?
I'm glad
the,
we are, because I was actually going to ask. So this,
that there is nothing fundamentally wrong with doing that. As John Penrod and I, our city attorney, kind of talked through this, he pointed out a couple things which I think were key considerations. One is that the Planning Commission speaks through the motions and through the staff report, and that I need to communicate to you, and this is something that Ralph had some initial concerns with as he started, that if you convey to us and during the meeting your rationale for voting one way or another, or your specific current concerns like Brett did with his motion, that essentially I think the quote was, if the city council decides that they need to reevaluate the plan based on hearing the things we've heard here today, then we recommend that they do that. That I want you to feel comfortable conveying your rationale and your thoughts, and being confident that I will not only include those in the staff report in the discussion, but that I will specifically cite those, either cite those findings or rationale in the presentation of the city council, because the city council is particularly interested in hearing the nuances of your discussion.
Yeah.
The motion is obviously your action, but it does help them to understand, was this a unanimous discussion? Was there concerns? And all those things help influence the policy decisions that they make. So first, I want you to be comfortable and help me give the opportunity to build some trust that if there are specific things you want the council to hear through the record, through the staff report, that I will do my best to get those in front of the council.
So I believe 100%, I have 100% trust in you doing that. I don't know if the city council, sorry guys, always reads every little piece and understands that was 2 long meetings.
Right.
Several hours long where we had those conversations. And frankly, I didn't want to make that motion, but it was the right thing to do.
Right.
And so for me, it was more of I want to get in front of the council so they can understand that there was way more than, hey, and it's more than even a bunch of written stuff. I think
Right.
sometimes it's good to hear something in person. And I don't know if that's what you intended to communicate
Well,
as well.
I think you bring up a good point in that if that could be part of the presentation to council, where the commission chair even potentially could be able to convey some sort of level of the discussion that was had, and if that would be able to be included as the bylaws, because I do think what you've included here is valid, and I think we're probably going to end up using it at one point.
Yeah.
But with cases like the most recent one, it may be valuable that, like, the commission chair would be able to present to the council the extent of the conversation that was had.
That's definitely something.
We took it so serious, and it was a hard one.
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
Yes, summarizing the discussion was difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
And I often revert to, please read the minutes or watch the YouTube, but it's who's going to sit and watch 2 hours of streaming city council or planning commission meeting other than Heather, where it's hard to hear and
Just to the council's credit, I have had a councilman call me to find out and discuss more on comments that I had made on
Me too.
a specific motion,
Yeah.
you know, and so they
No, there wasn't
They
a
are-
criticism. There was never a criticism of the
you know,
council.
they do value what we contribute, our discussion that we have, and that kind of a thing, and sometimes they do want to find out more than what may be there.
Sure.
And
But it's just, I mean, you two both saw and had to sit through those long discussions. And there was another city council member who was listening to it online who texted me right after, and I had a conversation with that person afterward. So, I mean, I think you got three people that really heard it.
Yeah.
But I think an in-person and no matter how well you do this, Josh, an in-person conversation, and I love your suggestion. I don't really want to go do that, but I'd gladly do it, especially on something as difficult as that one.
Yeah, I think that could be really positive because the kind of the B subsection to that first point that John made was that if an individual member of the commission feels like they need to go and speak to the council directly, that it probably is good. I don't know what adjective
Could even-
courtesy to let all the other planning commissioners know that they plan to do that. So if somebody else feels like they need to represent their position, they can take the opportunity to do that. But this concept of having the chair available, I think is worthy of some discussion.
And I think both sides can be presented in a situation like that.
And
Because I voted the way I didn't
Right.
want to vote,
right,
and so I can definitely represent the other side.
right,
But it was the right thing that we did.
right.
what about the concept of planning commissioners coming in as members of the public when it's something that's related
That
to
wa-
them?
that was
I mean,
my-
that's
that was my
different
intention,
too, right?
Yeah, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with that, but I think from a standpoint of policy making and order, that could become problematic quickly if we had a handful of planning commission members coming to the city council on the regular and saying, "Hey, this is what I thought," or I really struggled with this or that. That it may gum up the works a little bit, but that the conveying the deliberations and the considerations and the internal conflicts that are behind motions, I think conveying that information is key. But as much as possible, from a philosophical standpoint, maintaining the process of the planning commission speaking through the motion and the reports, and perhaps engaging with the chair to provide some additional context to council if needed, may be the best way to handle that.
The instance I'm thinking of is, I don't even know how many years ago, but quite a few, where the planning commission recommended to approve zone change, and I was against it. It was in my neighborhood, and so then I came to the city council meeting, and then they continued it, so then I came again to the city council meeting to, as a citizen. I didn't get up and say, "Hi, I'm on the planning commission, and I didn't vote for this because da-da-da-da." I just talked about, what I felt about it as a citizen. And so, like, when we, talking with neighbors, I was also very careful not to say, I'm on the planning commission and this is that and that. But just was a resource on, information on how zoning works. And I think that that is something that we should be able to do as citizens when there's something that is important to us personally that way.
I agree.
I don't disagree.
But
We
I
just-
wouldn't think that it would be appropriate as an official planning commissioner to come up and to discuss that.
And that's where, in my experience, that from a perception standpoint and kind of a practical standpoint, sometimes it's hard to take off the hat, or even if you don't say a word for that comment or that input to be separated from someone's position, and that there may be an element of sacrificing the private citizen role as a member of the planning commission a little bit. But again, talking with John, there's nothing inherently or fundamentally wrong or unethical or bad about doing that.
Well, in a situation like that, we'll use Genevieve's, Commissioner Genevieve, so that said, if Genevieve's specific situation, if she abstained from a vote, it seems to me when she came in to talk to them, she really is coming in as a citizen. She said, "Hey, I'm not."
I
gonna
didn't
vote on it."
abstain.
I know, but
voted in.
I'm saying you. I got it. You had voted a nay, but you could have, in that situation, said, you know, this impacts me personally, so I'm going to abstain, and then I'm coming in as a citizen, and I'm going to make my voice heard. The other thing, the other suggestion, maybe to go along with Hunter's, is what if this presentation happened that whether it's the chair or whoever was invited to the work session, and that's where they had the conversation with the city council. Then it's not, I mean, I know it's still on record and I know it's still public, but it might be a good place to have the conversation.
Well, it's a more conversational setting.
Yeah,
Seems more appropriate, for sure.
yeah.
Anyone can go to the work session, though.
Yeah, but they're not.
Correct. It's a
they
public
can't
meeting, but it's not a public hearing, and neither would these items be a public hearing at the city council. The mayor it's the mayor's discretion to open those items for comment, and typically he does. He doesn't look at somebody in the crowd and say, "You're here to make a comment to your elected officials about this item." No thanks. But
But if,
Oh, they don't have to have public.
no, there's no public hearing. You do.
Ah,
They're required. There's only one required public hearing, and it has to be. The planning commission has that. The council can by practice open a public hearing, or they can just take comments on an ad hoc basis at the discretion of the mayor.
but Ralph, what I was going to say is since they don't allow the public to talk in the work sessions generally, I'm sure they've done it because I barged in there and talked one time. But if the mayor invited someone in, someone from the planning commission to maybe the way Hunter described it, and then they can have the conversation, and it's not just a presentation. It's they can ask questions,
Right.
they can grill, and both sides. If there's some people voted one way and others have voted another way, they can push both sides and see what was discussed.
I like the requirement, just making sure it's the chair though, so you have to go. I think that
Trying to
would be.
avoid that conversation.
Well, even if you, yeah, Hunter's in the right avenue there, but no, but I think that's where the responsibility should lie, or an appointed by the chair, someone appointed by the chair. So if somebody's leading the charge on the commission, you say it's probably more appropriate if Genevieve represents us, or Ralph or whoever. Yeah.
Well, I think the one thing about it is we have a vote.
Right.
Everyone has a vote. We have more voting and more influence than any other opportunity
Right.
or any other citizen has. So we have a responsibility to try to look at things from a big perspective, not as hard as it is, but also the fact that we can continue items if we don't have enough. We don't have to accept motions. If I didn't like the motion you made, I could have said nothing, not seconded it. I could have waited, I could have gone against it. But ultimately, we have a vote, and that vote is saying, yes, this is what I recommend. And I think we have to take that really serious. But at the same time, we can't, I don't think if we don't get what we want, or we don't feel like we've been conveyed properly, then we have to like change maybe that method. But we can't like, yeah, I lost, so I'm gonna go campaign for this project or
Right.
do this or that other. We have to accept the fact that this commission is a broad, that's the great powerful thing, is that the commission's big enough. We have a wide range of things, so anyway, I just think your vote says more, and use it, and
Yep.
be careful with it. And if we don't feel comfortable about something, we can continue it. But I don't think you wanna just keep continuing things,
Agreed.
because we don't wanna deal with it, you know, we wanna, because I've been on the other side of that, where,
Legally, we're not.
you know, you've got a financial stake in something, and then as bodies, government bodies just continue to, they don't wanna talk about it, so they,
Kick it
well,
down the
let's
road.
meet
Yeah.
next month. I'm like, do you know what 30 days of interest is costing me?
Yeah.
I mean, that little one motion may have cost me $50,000.
And that at the same time, the opposite of that is I've seen times when the commission has said, let's just have a vote, let's get this thing over with.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I agree.
the outcome was just the
We
opposite
take
of what we're
each
trying
vote,
to do.
that's all I was trying to say.
I think it's a great
We
comment.
take our votes seriously.
Yep.
We look at our motions, we continue if we don't
Yep.
have enough information, but then everything's on the public record. And I have been reached out to by others on the city council, and I've been reached out to people that, you know, wanted to influence it otherwise, and I'm like, don't talk to me. You know, because we're trying to come as an objective board and say, this is what we're trying to do. Anyway,
Yeah, I
that's all
agree.
I have to say.
And to build on Ralph's comment, that we have our vote, and we also have the chance when we go to make our vote to kind of make a summary statement as well. And so, especially if, you know, your vote is different than the others, but even if you just want to make sure that your feelings about it are clear,
Yeah.
you can summarize those and then give your vote. So that makes it kind of
Puts it on
easier
record.
for them to grab that sentiment and be able to convey that. So they don't have to pull it out of the
So
whole
logistically, have a dissenting vote. Would I get with Heather and say, I want this to be stated in the minutes, or what? What do you?
No, you would
can
just
say it
state
right
it.
then.
Right,
So we
right
would-
on the spot. Okay.
Yeah, we would do like a roll call vote, and then
Perfect.
you would say,
Hey,
I don't agree with this, or I think
Because
that
of,
this
right.
is because this, and so I'm voting nay.
It just gets right in the minutes right off the bat. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you ever feel that what you said wasn't adequate, was over summarized or not
Represented
not
right.
properly represented, then that's a
Will be
big
correct.
a big portion of the reason why we
Yeah.
try to send the minutes out with the
Yeah.
packet and
Perfect.
let Heather know.
Yeah, and Heather's great with that. And, so,
Perfect.
yeah, sometimes
So I would think that
I
that,
said
gonna happen,
things
they get
not
hairy.
the way I meant. And Heather's like, no, that's what you said.
shall we play it back for you? No. Yeah. No, but I think so. In the case that Brett talked about, that would be an exception where that would have to be the case, where we'd say the chair would want you to represent. You know.
But it does happen. I've been, I guess, 2 years on this.
And I was just playing off what
And I've
Ralph
seen
said.
I've seen it a couple of times where I wish we could have had I mean, I really appreciate again, Mindy and Jake being here, but there are times when I wish, I'm like, I don't know if we can communicate effectively without being there in person, really what we went through to come up with this vote. And it's usually when there is a split vote too, when I feel that way. So I love the suggestion, and I hope we can push that forward And I'm better with a work session than I would be with the city council meeting, official meeting.
And I want to make it clear that I'm not trying to dissuade anybody, Hunter or Brett, from commenting specifically on the item that will be back at the city council on May 7th, but that I want to make sure that we come up with a regular,
That's process.
a process so that you feel that you have the opportunity that we can try to deal with that concern of not feeling like we've adequately communicated.
I won't be here
So
on
it
the
was
7th.
continued?
No,
It
we made
was-
our recommendation.
Yeah.
there.
No, the
Yeah, but
Yeah,
the
it
city
was
council.
yeah, the applicant asked for
And
a
I wondered when I
continuance.
stood up and just walked out, I wondered, okay, what's Josh gonna do with that? And there it is,
Oh, so the
5.3.
The applicant asked for a continuance.
Yes.
Yeah. And I won't be here on the 7th, so I might be calling on someone.
I also won't be here on the 7th.
So I will
Ralph will be here.
go and have some more conversations about the suggestions you guys have made tonight and figure out what to do with that and where to put it in these bylaws and bring you back some.
Yeah, but to give feedback, that's what was continued to the 7th, right?
Correct.
Well, that's kind of what our job is to kind of do the heavy lifting, to
Yeah.
kind of come to this and then put together a little bit of summary and say yes or no, and this is how we felt about it, and then they can go back and look as they need to. But otherwise, you just take everything to the city council and let them dig through everything. I mean, that's our whole point. That's why we have parts boards. Is the whole idea is to have groups that pull together a plan, and then they can say, okay, those are the people we want. They all approved us to be here, so they know who we are, that what we're trying to do, and so anyway, I really personally have been on this for a little while, and I've really appreciated the diverse opinions and the integrity of each person that I have served with, and it has been an honor to work with each of you. And I knew nothing about this, to be honest with you, other than I've been on the other side and been frustrated. And the reason I accepted this was because I thought, well, if you don't like it, then maybe you do something about it or get to understand it. So I have totally had to put a different hat on up here many times and realize, yeah, I didn't understand when I was down there. So,
In regards to the rest of the bylaws, if you will take the opportunity to read through them and send Heather and I any questions you have about them or recommendations, we're going to work over the next month. We may be for the 14th meeting, we may be after that, to make amendments, to propose these amendments and bring them to you for your discussion and action. Because you can just, at any meeting of the Planning Commission, you can amend or revise them by a majority vote of the quorum. So it's rather simple. We just want to make sure that that this serves you and us together, that we're not bound to something in here that doesn't necessarily work, that this is a tool for us to communicate how we want to operate.
So really, the only two changes is that 1.2 and the 5.3 that you.
There's a number of other
Oh, okay.
underlines in here, but there may be some things in here that say, hey, that why you may, like, I came in to this position and for a plat, Springville for some reason had all the plats printed with a line for the Planning Commission chair to sign, which just then meant we had to go track down the Planning Commission chair to sign the plat, and there's no state reason. So I kind of asked, why? Well, that's how we've done it. So we
You
just,
should probably bring that back, but only have the vice chair be the person who does
okay.
this.
So if you run into something like that, like, hey, why would we do that? Why does that let us know, and we'd like to make these work well for
city
us.
council does sign the plats though, right?
No, the mayor signs the plat.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Josh, any more comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, I have, and hopefully everybody else is interested in this as I am. You dropped a great little morsel on the Allens block. What about Lakeside Landing? What's the latest there?
LGI is working on turning around comments on their first review of their final plat for that 15 acres.
Is that the front section?
No, this is the section on Center Street, just west of the new industrial building on that we call Lake Shore on the frontage road that they painted once and then kind of repainted. So that's that 140 some odd units there and some commercial. To the north of that, Thrive Development is working through responses to the first review of their preliminary plat there.
But it's
then-
still moving forward, because I had heard rumors that,
Oh, it's still very much moving forward. We finally 18 months later got revisions to the first response to the first DRC review on UBA's portion, which is that southern portion,
Right.
including the transfer station.
let us move forward, that's great.
Yeah, things are moving forward. They got approval from UP to bore the pressurized irrigation under the tracks. So that was a big critical path item. So things are continuing to move forward. We meet weekly, and there's a lot of moving pieces to
Great
get.
news. Any other questions? We don't have a legislative session, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, let's